So, like I was saying, last time was paid and also the general overview. I talked about the marketing stack. I talked about how all this kind of stuff fits together. This time, I'm going to talk about earned and a little bit about owned, and hopefully get through this so we can go on to 301 next time. If we don't, I'll talk about owned next time. So, earned media, it's the one with the most misinterpretations on the web. People expect earned media to be a miracle, and they feel entitled to it. They feel like they should have a #1 ranking. They feel like they should be getting a lot of attention in social, which causes them no end of problems, which is why I show complete insanity, digital rudeness, and anger. I'm going to start with organic, and the main thing to understand in organic is, in spite of what Microsoft says, Google is still very much in charge. They are the major player. Google, without YouTube, dwarfs Bing in terms of traffic, and much of the traffic Bing is getting is because they're buying it, right? They offer points, basically, when you do searches on Bing that you can use to buy stuff. That is not, in my opinion, true demand for their tool, for their technology. Now, the other thing about organic is, of course, it's the organic rankings right there, right? That generates 70% of traffic from search. These are the paid listings. They generate 30% of the traffic from search. And yet, most of our clients put 10% of their budget into organic and 90% into paid search. So they're exactly upside down, which of course makes you think, what the hell's going on? And the reasoning, I think, is it's very hard to measure the impact of any kind of earned media, but especially organic search. If you can convince clients to do it, there's a huge competitive advantage because very few companies, even today, do this right. Very few companies even come close. Very few companies are avoiding the things that actively do them harm. That's a better way to say it. And the thing you got to understand, and that nobody does, is SEO is not a numbers game. Okay? It is not a keywords game. It's not about a certain number of links or certain words on the page. It's a quality game. The site with the highest quality wins. If you imagine a scale that has perfect at one end and awful at the other, the closer you get to perfect as a relevant website, the higher you are going to rank. Now, of course, that means you're not avoiding the right terms, right? You're using the language of your audience. So if you sell running shoes, you use the phrase running shoes on your website where it makes sense. But search engines really look at two categories of factors. They're going to look at crawl data. I know it's kind of nasty, but it is a spider. So, and then they look at significance. So crawl data is literally technical accessibility. Can a crawler get into your site and find the stuff it needs? And then does it find errors or issues that might affect a person's ability to get in the site and find what they need? Significance is literally how important you are. What's your authority? How much do people like what you're offering? Is your content of high, quote, quality, unquote? Is it something that people want to see, and are they demonstrating that? And if you don't believe me, if you don't believe that things have changed like this, that it's no longer a world of links and keywords, just look at how Google has tweaked their algorithm. Look at the very public penalties, which they're really not, but the public adjustments to their algorithm that they've made in the last couple of years. First one, of course, is Panda. Right? Google Panda was named after the engineer who was involved in building it, not after the big fluffy animal. But the panda is probably fluffier, so we're going with him. Panda was all about high quality websites. It was about no longer interpreting individual pages of content, but instead interpreting and measuring entire websites, and about much more accurate language measurement and quality of content recognition. So, looking for writing that is literally better. Google is now better at detecting crappy writing. I know that's very hard to get your head around because Google is an enormous computer, but it's a really enormous computer. So they're actually looking at quality of writing. They also look at more basic things like, do you have 10 million pages on your site that have 3 words each? Right? That's going to get you in trouble and seems impossible, but if you're a big discussion forum and you have 10 million members and they all profile pages and none of them fill out their profiles, guess what? you now have 10 million pages with almost no words on them. Those are called thin pages. That's one example. And that goes for significance, right? It also goes to technical accessibility. Then you've got Penguin. Now this was a penalty. This is an active campaign. I don't know if you saw it today, but SEO Moz was just given a warning because UMoz, they say, is in violation of their linking guidelines in terms of service, which I find hysterically funny. Since 9/10 of the content on UMoz is saying, do white hat SEO under all circumstances, don't violate Google's terms of service. And of course, now all the engineers at Moz are very carefully dismantling the letter and what Google said, and they're writing these detailed posts explaining why Google is wrong. So this should be really fun to watch. Penguin actively penalized websites that went out and sought links, and sought them artificially, paid for them, got them by giving away something, got them by posting infographics with post this on your website text that then has a link back to them. All of those kinds of techniques. Anything artificial, anything you do for the sake of building links pretty much can get you in trouble. For folks who were here, Portent got penalized. Josh walked into my office looking like someone had just leapt out the window. And then he told me that Portent was under manual penalty. We were gone from the search rankings. And I actually started laughing because I was just like, that is the funniest thing I've ever heard. We were back in 36 hours. It was clearly a mistake. The only way you get back in that fast is if it's a mistake. But the point is, Google is heavily, heavily penalizing people who violate their terms of service around links. That's because that is one part of their algorithm that has been abused the most. And that's where the sense of entitlement comes in. People say, you know what, I deserve a #1 ranking, so I'm going to go out and buy these links. And that's their reasoning. It really is. I've talked to so many companies who come to us for recovery from a penalty. Just so you know, no Portent client was penalized by Penguin, knock wood. But companies come to us for help, and it's always, this is a legitimate link. I paid good money for it. I've seriously heard people say that. I'm like, you're not quite getting the concept there, guys. But anyway, so what happens? Well, you see a site that outranks you, right? And this is what happens with clients all the time. And you see that they've just done a big blog post writing campaign. Maybe they did 2 posts that have infographics in them or embed slide shares. So you decide, I'm going to write more blog posts than them, and I'm going to embed slide shares in every single one of them, right? And we've all seen this happen. But they still outrank you. Why did they still outrank you? Because you've only dealt with one factor. You haven't actually moved your site closer to perfect. All you've done is mimic what another site's doing, and you don't even know if that's what's helping them rank. What you really need to do is move your site closer to perfect. And that means, first of all, improving significance, which is measured in a lot of ways, in many, many different ways, by the clues that people give when they say that something is significant. So links are definitely one, right? And they're still the most common. They're a form of citation. But mentions in social media, on other websites, whatever, that's another form of citation. And then people not bouncing right back to Google. And that's probably not a positive indicator. It's a negative indicator. And by the way, going out and hiring 10,000 people to visit a website and then bounce back to Google rankings will not make a difference. But people sticking around, not bouncing back is very, very important. Now, you can also provide hints through the structure of your site. And some of those can be negative hints, right? You can organize your site in such a way that pages just don't look important, right? If your site is 10 layers deep and you've got a page at level 10 and you're trying to rank for that, it's probably not going to happen. Crawl data is the stuff that computers can determine without help from people. So they don't need to see a human behavior. They don't need to try and track how people react to the site. Instead, they just crawl the site and they get data. So they get data on performance, on different errors, on the structure, efficiency of the site, the language, and the clarity of the language on that site, which again, they can measure without people now. They look at structure, like I said, and that's site structure, but also page structure. Stuff at the top is more important than stuff at the bottom. We know that Google is also pretty good at looking at bold versus non-bold and headings versus non-headings. But if you just bold everything, Google's probably going to take one look at that and say, you're an idiot, and not do anything with the content. Anything where you think you can fool Google You have to remember that half of the engineering team at Google are probably capable of winning the Nobel Prize, and just realize that, and that's an exaggeration, but they're all much smarter than us. All right, the chances that we can really outsmart them are pretty slim. So just keep that in mind if you look at something and say, oh yeah, we can beat them. Lousy writing will definitely get you in trouble. I love that little piece, so I just always highlight it. How you do your title tags, right? Environment. And then back to crawl accessibility, realize, people do think Google, the search engine, Google's engineers are brilliant people. Google, the search engine, we all assume it's really smart, but really it's kind of a moron. And if you do things like you put a redirect on your homepage, or you create navigation that creates duplicate pages or something like that, you're going to have problems. And it's not a penalty. It's because Google can't handle it. Google can't figure it out. Google, the engineers like Matt Cutts, who may be leaving Google now. I don't know. He had some kind of, he's gone for 4 months on sabbatical. They may be cloning him and replacing him with someone else. But they say, that, oh, don't worry, we'll sort out duplicate content. Yeah, they'll sort it out at your expense, right? They'll pick, first of all. Second of all, anything that's going to take additional resources, anything that moves you further from perfect is going to cause a problem. So you got tons of duplicate content on your website. Your competitor in every other way is equal to you, but they don't have duplicate content. Who are they going to rank first? Right? It's not even that hard. So what's good about organic search? Well, it's super scalable. I wanted a bunny, that's a hare, I know. It can multiply almost infinitely, because as you get ranking for stronger and stronger terms and you work your way up the long tail to the head, you get more and more traffic. Search is considered a utility. What would happen if Google were gone for 24 hours? Just think about that. Nobody could search, no maps, no nothing. It wouldn't be the end of the world, but it would sure provoke some reactions. It is a utility now. It's like having a power outage. It drives 60 to 65% of all online traffic, period. And that's just organic, not paid. It covers 6 of the 7 lifecycle phases in the customer lifecycle. And I'll talk about those in a minute, but I talked about it 2 weeks ago. That's the idea that you move from discovery to research to consideration to intent to conversion. It covers pretty much all the parts of that cycle. If you build your site right, you've done 50% of the work for good SEO. If you then do intelligent marketing, you've probably done the other 50%. Generally, we get hired because someone built the site as if they were dropped on their heads multiple times before the day that they pushed the launch switch. I don't know. People do things on these sites that seem like it would be more work to do it the way they did it than to do it right. And they do it anyway. And then they'll go out and they'll do marketing where they say, okay, we need to do search marketing. Please go write us some SEO content, right? Which makes me want to shovel out my own spleen with a spoon or something, because it's just painful. SEO content, really? Sorry, ranting a little. What's the bad? Well, the bad is not provided. And Google has now started doing this thing, supposedly to protect all of our privacy, called not provided. And what they're doing is they're taking most keywords, most searches on your site, and instead of showing the keyword that generated the search, they're showing not provided in parentheses. So if you look at our site, 87% of search traffic to our site is labeled not provided. We do not know what phrases are generating traffic to our site. Google Webmaster Tools does have a list of keywords that generate traffic to your site with percentages. So far, I have found that you are better off guessing than you are using those numbers. I'm serious. Those numbers aren't even consistently inaccurate. You can't even say it's always off by 30%. They're wildly all over the place, and they miss terms and everything. They say this is because of privacy, but of course they don't lock off paid search keywords. And they still, cookie our machines with everything on the planet, and they still know these keywords. It's just we don't know them, and they actually know exactly who's doing the searches too. So I don't totally understand it, but there you have it. And of course, there's this response on the part of clients that, okay, if I'm outranking, if I'm being outranked and they're spamming, then I should be able to spam too. That's not fair. And the first thing I'll say is you're right. And sometimes life isn't fair. If they did the spamming 5 years ago, it's going to take longer for Google to detect it. If you then go and do it, Google will see the anomaly, detect it right away, and probably slam you so fast that you'll wonder what happened. But you go to someone, right, and they make you the promise. Oh yeah, of course, $99.95 will get you ranking. Or you go to Fiverr and you get something like this. Or you go to Fiverr and you get something like this. And then eventually, basically, Google does this to you, and you're gone. And then you have to fix the penalty. And fixing a penalty with Google is like cleaning out the litter box of the fussiest cat on the planet. If there is like a grain of poop left in that litter box, she is not coming back. That's it. You are done. This is how Google works. When we've done penalty recoveries, if we leave a single domain out there, if we forget it, if we miss it, we're stuck. Google, let's assume that Google did not make a mistake when they banned us. They brought us back after I removed one link from one site-wide link from one website. Assuming that's really what the reason, that's pretty fussy. So what do you use it for? Well, you use it as an infinitely scalable channel. There is no channel that scales better than SEO. Use it to control your brand. I always try to convince clients of this, but they never want to do it until they need it. You should make sure that you occupy all of the top 10 rankings for your brand name. And you can't do that with a single site. One website cannot occupy more than one ranking in most cases, so you're going to have to find other ways and other pages to rank. Like for us, it's our LinkedIn page, it's a couple of SlideShare pages, it's our Twitter account, all this stuff, and we occupy the front page. Why is that important? Because if someone gets really angry at you, you don't want them to be able to rank number 2 for your name, so that every time someone searches on your brand, they see a big article about how Portent ripped them off. Because that can happen. The problem is most companies do wait until that happens, and that's too late. You can use it to grow your audience, right? SEO is a fantastic way to grow your audience because it plays a major role in the early stages of the customer life cycle. The biggest one there being awareness, right? People are going to find you shortly after they discover you, which means they're just starting to have a problem. They're just starting to have something they need to actively find an answer to. Don't use organic SEO if you expect fast results. There is no way under any circumstances that you should say to any client ever that you can help them get any result from SEO in less than 3 months. It can happen if they've done something really moronic and their site is completely blocked by Google or something, but never, ever tell them that that's possible. Never do it without a content strategy. At this point, content strategy and SEO are basically one thing. Okay, post Panda, post Penguin, how else are you going to do this? You can fix technical issues, and if a client comes to us and says, please just fix the technical issues, okay, we can do that. But if they want long-term, future-proof SEO, they've got to have a content strategy, and they have to have a social media strategy. Okay, these two are so intertwined. Remember, you need those citations. Okay, citations often happen in social media. If you have no strategy for social media, you have no citation growth, and people can't start seeing you in search as well as social. Any questions about SEO before I go on to social?
I'm just curious, like how often do you find people getting confused between the difference between content strategy and social strategy?
So I'm just repeating these for the mic, but Brock was just asking how often people get confused between content and social strategy. The truth is, there should not be a difference. It's a communication strategy that involves social and content. We have to talk about them separately because the market talks about content marketing and social media marketing, just like they talk about SEO, and I'd rather not talk about that at this point either. To me, it's all part of your marketing communication strategy. It's all about visibility.
So when you talk about the social media strategy with citations, define a citation.
Just a citation is just when someone mentions you.
Oh, okay.
So, hey, Portent did a great job. So social media. Some quick facts about it. First, I talked about paid social, so I'm not really going to go into this in a whole lot of depth. Just understand that social media is a place where people talk, and it's a place where you generally get discovered as opposed to found. People don't search for you on social media. Not mostly. They're going to discover you, meaning someone's going to forward a piece of content to them. Someone's going to retweet something that you find interesting. You're going to post with a question, and someone's going to answer with the name of a brand that they think can help. That's what happens in social media. If something goes right, people pay a compliment that tends to get spread around. If something goes wrong, they start lobbing insults that also get spread around. A couple of things I don't talk about in paid social are, first of all, social voting sites. Social voting sites are things like Dig, Reddit, things like that. Never, ever post marketing stuff. Never post anything with even the slightest hint of a pitch to a social voting site. You will generate so much hate so fast, it will make you cry. And I am not kidding, okay? You will see comments that will make you cry. An example is Hacker News, okay? You can post stuff there. I've gotten stuff on Hacker News, all right? But it's totally non-promotional. It doesn't even have our logo in it. Or it'll be a long-form piece of content that has our logo once or twice. And this is the tricky part with social voting, is you want to get attention for your brand, but you can't get it directly. So what you do instead is you post content that's really, really interesting and is bound to grab people's attention. And then you take that, and once people are showing an interest in that, that strengthens your social media profiles across the board, so that next time when you don't do social voting, but you just post something interesting that does have your brand involved, there's more people to pay attention. You're growing your audience. That's really what you're doing. You can go to Q&A sites like Quora. Quora is awesome. You can get almost any question on the planet answered on Quora. I have seen questions about Pokemon. I have seen questions about the plot line in the Transformer movies, which of course there isn't one. And I've seen tons and tons of questions about marketing. The trick here is to look for questions that have lots of followers, or a substantial following, and no answers. So here's one with 12 people following it and no answers at all. It's a good one to answer. This is also where you can get on social voting sites. So on a site like Hacker News or Reddit, people ask questions a lot. And you can go there and answer those questions. So there, you're not promoting, unless you answer the question with, hey, I've got the product that'll fix it. But if you go on there and just answer the questions, you start to get credit, because all these sites have some form of gamification, right? They all score you somehow. So like on Quora, I've become a little bit of an addict, because I'm like, ooh, hey, I'm number one in SEO. On Reddit, I'm hopelessly wimpy and small, but at least I have some record. So you start to build up this reputation. Now, we've actually gotten clients from Quora. We've actually had people hire us because they see the questions that we answer on Quora. On Reddit, it's just a matter of accumulating enough legitimacy so that if we do a piece of content that's informational, I can then go to Reddit and post it, and people won't hate us for it, which is also pretty important. So a lot of social media is building a reputation. It's becoming known as being someone who's not going to just spam your way out there. It's becoming known as someone with useful information, and then becoming just known as an authority. Mm-hmm.
Get a Reddit account. Is he just getting a personal one and just answering the questions, or targeting yourself, like just saying, I am this company?
So in social media, should you get a personal account or have a company account, I will almost always say get a personal account. Okay. There, on networks like Facebook and Google+, there are company pages. Same thing with LinkedIn. On sites like Quora, they don't want to see people, just in your bio, you put who you work for. And because of the way a lot of search and social algorithms work now, if you switch companies, doesn't necessarily matter. The benefit of the things you used to do for the old company will probably still help. Now, there are companies who have people create separate personal accounts when they come on board. And I can see that. I just think it's awful lot of work. So what's the good about organic social? It's great for building discovery. It's great for customer interaction, right? Alaska Airlines is still, to me, the gold standard. If I send them a tweet any time of day, they seem to always have an answer for me. It's a great way to build your audience. You do something right in social media, like we're working on a campaign right now that I'm hoping will do something. And you can just get people who have never heard of you, never knew anything about you. The bad is if you're just stupid, okay? Or if you're stupid and you fail to apologize for it. Adecco stole an entire marketing idea from someone, and then when everybody caught them doing it, they wrote an apology that wasn't an apology. And what you have to understand is you're not in charge, okay? You are not in charge. And if clients ever say to you, we're afraid to go into social media because people will talk about us, they're already talking about you, okay? Don't think for a second that people aren't talking about you. If you get out there and get into the conversation, you have some control. This chart shows what happened to Adecco around that whole, the theft of the marketing idea. So you can see that when they first come out with the idea, they have a pretty decent social media presence. When they, the guy whose name is Turner blogged about the idea being stolen, and there starts to be this kind of Twitter and Facebook storm, and I'm tracking the sentiment of tweets and stuff, and you can see it kind of hits a low point, and then they put out this response that is so lame. It basically doesn't say we're sorry, it says we're just trying to do our best. So, it's like stabbing someone and then saying, I was just trying to do my best, sorry. Except you don't say sorry. So that hurt them even more. And they start to slowly kind of creep up to where people only hate them as opposed to wanting to burn their office down. Then they issue finally a real apology. But later, and it's covered up here, later on, a separate legal issue comes up. And because they had already hurt themselves, it just killed them. People just started unfollowing. The few people that were left that were fans were just gone. And that's the thing is, if you don't keep an eye on this, it's not like this stuff goes away. Right, here I am a year and a half later still talking about this, or a year later still talking about this. It doesn't go away.
Wait, why did it go back up?
Just because there were so few people talking that, the sentiment went back up because there were so few people talking that, it just went back to relatively positive. Yeah, so if things get really bad, just ban everybody and you'll get some positive comments. By the way, banning people, really bad idea. Like deleting people's tweets or whatever when they're just, if they're being obscene or something, yes, delete them. But if they're just saying negative things about you, do not delete their comments because other people will find out. They will, I guarantee it. So you can use social to answer questions, right? To check in with customers and to improve discovery. And to me, maybe most important, to monitor how people feel about you and your brand. You can comment on big changes in the industry in general, which I find to be very valuable for us because it attracts a big audience. And you can announce new products and things. Don't do one of those, you do all of them. And I usually say, you want maybe a 2 to 10 ratio of blatant marketing stuff and pure informational, helpful stuff. Mm-hmm.
Where does reputation management come into play? Is that a term used?
Well, yeah. So what's reputation management? Reputation management is really more about search rankings, and that's where I was talking about controlling the top 10. Social media is more of, it's all reputation management, but when people say reputation management, they're talking about search. They're talking about controlling those top 10 spots and then burying something that's really negative. Again, it's, basically the definition of reputation management is fixing it long after it got broken, and not being proactive.
Like City Light.
I'm sorry?
Like City Light.
Yes, like Seattle City Light, exactly. And social, again, has a pretty broad appeal. Again, it is at its strongest in awareness. And awareness is where most companies are completely non-existent. It is the weakest point for any company. So if they do social and search, that's crucial. It's crucial because that builds awareness. It gives them access to a much bigger audience than they have right now. Consideration, intent, and conversion, that's just about better serving people who are already aware of you. And it's pretty easy to try and test different things on social media. Don't test too many things, but you can. Don't use social media to falsely acquire friends. Okay? How is this real or significant or useful? And if people have heard me talk about marketing before, I've said it's about being significant and being useful. This is neither, right? You buy a bunch of fake friends? No. Don't complain on social media if you're a brand. If you're a person, go ahead, whatever. I do it all the time. Don't feed the trolls. If people go out there and say nasty things about you, if you're a brand, you respond once and you say, I'm really sorry you had a bad experience. How can we help you? Or, we're going to address this and this is how we're doing it, whatever else. If they then come back and they're still obnoxious, just ignore them. Okay? They can rant and rave all they want, but just ignore them. Now, if they go beyond the pale, if they start like dominating an entire thread, then you got to decide what you're going to do. And that's where more complex decisions come in with lawyers and stuff. It happens like 1 out of 1,000, 1 out of 100,000 times. So I wouldn't spend a whole lot of time worrying about it. Don't use it to be an asshole. Okay? Don't trot your total ignorance out in front of the entire world. All right? Not necessary. This one, I'm just sorry she didn't die in a horrible plane crash on the way there. If you could have done it without killing everybody else on the plane. She, by the way, was a major PR executive. She is not anymore. Yeah, people are unbelievable. It is amazing the crap that they will post. One of the best ones I ever saw was a reply to something I said where they said, and this one has come up so many times in my career, okay, as long as you don't Jew me down on the price. I was like, boy, did you say that to the wrong person. Anyway, other things you can do. Well, you can do local, right? There's a lot of social media connected with local. You can do video. YouTube is a major social media network. Also, you can put video up on Vine and on Facebook, every place else. You can do images. Services like Instagram. We do not use Instagram enough for retail clients. Any client that sells a consumer product, I don't care what it is, even if it's mufflers for Aston Martins, you can take advantage of Instagram to get that stuff on there. You can.
We're actively looking. I mean, we have to use it with brand awareness clients.
Yeah.
It depends on the client's KPIs.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's a platform we're actively
Cool.
pushing.
Well, I'm glad because pre-Sarah, we were not using Instagram half as much as I thought we should, and we weren't really using images either. But yeah, Instagram is extremely powerful. Yeah, that's thumbs up, yeah. SlideShare. Content sharing sites like SlideShare. So powerful. I am a total SlideShare addict now. I will put stuff up there all the time. I encourage clients to do it too, because if you want to get in front of 50 million people, put something up on SlideShare that SlideShare features on their homepage. I mean, I've had stuff go up on their homepage now that's only gotten 6,000 or 7,000 views, but I've also had stuff go up there that got 120,000 views. And that affects your brand and it affects your business. Question about earned media before I go into owned? Okay. Owned media, I can't talk quite as much about it, not because there's less to it, but because it gets very tactical in a big hurry. But it's an asset, okay? Owned media is something you build and develop. Earned media presence can be an asset, but doesn't have to be, and paid is not. It has no endurance. When you turn off paid, it's gone. Owned media, if you stop, everything you built sticks around forever unless you actively remove it. And it proves that you're useful. It can cause spamming, really poor quality data, and lumping your entire audience into one big barrel. So parts of owned. The biggest one is really creative. And now understand, when I define creative, I'm talking about a lot of things. All right, almost any form of communication to me is creative. So yeah, it's aesthetics, it's how things look and feel, but it's also everything that affects the customer experience until you reach infrastructure, right? Infrastructure is where creative stops. So if you take owned and then content and analytics, all of that to me is part of creative. The things that aren't, pretty much infrastructure. Everything else is influenced by it, right? Paid and earned are influenced, and obviously the rest are intimately involved with it. What's the good about owned? Well, you're in control. There's a lot of terrible stuff out there, truly horrible stuff. So if you do a good job, you're going to stand out. And it almost doesn't matter what industry you're in. The only industry I would say that's done well is probably sports. You don't find too many sites for running shoes and things like that are just terrible. Certainly I've learned that cars still have truly horrible sites. And again, it's very easy to try and test, right? Because you can very quickly change things out and change things up. What's bad? Well, there's a lot of crap out there. And it still stuns me how hard people work to screw up their creative. And it's typically because they have this desire to create something miraculous, and it causes them to reach way beyond what they're capable of, and it looks ridiculous, or it reads horribly, or the camera's going like this, or the user interface is completely impossible, or the writing is just filled with multi-syllable words that make no sense. People don't want to pay for good creative. They don't want to pay for writing. They don't want to pay for design. They don't want to pay for UX. They think they should be able to get written content for $150, right? And get a fantastic award-winning design for $500. And the reason for that is everyone's an expert. And I am as guilty of this as anyone else. It's very easy to look at something and say, oh, yeah, sure, I can do this. And Brock is being really good about not starting to smile or jump up and down or something. But this is the trick. And again, I know I'm not talking much about anything in Owned. I'm going to skim over the house list in even less time. The thing about creative is that it gets its fingers through every part of strategic marketing. And really, if your infrastructure is busted, you can't do strategic marketing. If your content, if your creative sucks, it's going to drag you down everywhere you go. There is no type of marketing you can do better, you can do effectively if your creative sucks. Here's a good example. We're working with a client right now who's very concerned about making sure that they're present in the marketplace. They have decided this 3.5 weeks before the biggest challenge they've ever faced comes online. 3.5 weeks. In the meantime, all the creative they have is good, but not great, and doesn't really aim at the right purpose. They're totally hosed. Okay, there is no way that they're going to fix this now. We can start fixing it, and we should, but there's no way you're going to fix it right now. It's a network monitoring client here in Seattle. Yeah. So this is really a subsection of creative, but the house list. I talk about this because I come out of the direct marketing world way back when, and your catalog list, your mailing list was your property. It was your asset. So the house list is very, very important. It's the list of email addresses you can reach. It's the list of customers. It's all the people who follow you on Twitter, whatever it is. The most important thing to just remember is you don't send out to that list in one big vomit, okay? You segment. You send out to different people at different times. You randomly segment and test. All right? Don't treat your house list as this place you can just spit email out or do whatever. You have to treat it just as carefully as you would paid search or anything else. So what's good about it? Well, again, you're in control. You can manage the pacing. You can target very specific pages on your website. And again, you can easily test, right? You can send out one email to 3 groups of people with 3 different subject lines and see which one works the best. What's bad about it? Well, it's all about spam, right? You can send out some truly horrible stuff. And it's not just about the legal definition of spam. People say, "Oh, I'm obeying canned spam." That's not what it's about. It's about the emotional definition of spam. If people start clicking the spam button in their email client, very quickly, blacklisting services like Spamhaus block your email for entire ISPs. Very quickly. You'd be shocked how fast it is. We have one client that just operated in Alaska. They're not a client anymore. And they managed to get themselves blocked for Alaska's biggest email ISP. So when they sent out email, it was reaching almost no one. And it's very easy. It does not take many spam complaints to do it. And doing a spam complaint is just clicking a single button. So you really have to be careful. You have to send out stuff, again, that's genuinely useful, right? It's got to be useful. Now, if you're a product that everybody wants, then yes, sending out a discount notification could be really useful. Informing people about a new type of product, very useful, right? Some of the nerdy games that I play, you know, they'll send out an email saying, hey, there's a new edition coming out. Cool. Sending me something every single day saying buy now, buy now, buy now, no, that's spam. So content marketing. I hate this phrase. It makes me nauseous every time I hear it. Because if you do marketing without content, you have nothing. Right? How do you do marketing without content? I don't know. I don't know. But the problem is that people treat content as some kind of horrendous disease, right? It's something that infects you and spreads through your digestive tract or something. So what they end up doing is they do some content and they put it way the hell over here on a blog or something, right? And they keep it as far away as possible, like in quarantine, which of course totally defeats the purpose, right? Because you have to integrate content into your entire strategy. It is part of your creative strategy. It's part of your communication strategy. It has to be just as tied through everything as your creative, your other creative. So what's good about it? Well, everything is content, right? Product photos, your about page, whatever. It's all content. It's yours. You own it. And you can get customers to generate it for you. UMoz, the thing I was talking about on Moz.com, that is almost 100% customer generated. It is so awesome that they have gotten so many people, including me, to write good blog posts to get up there. It does so much for them in terms of SEO that Google has decided to ban them for it. The bad is that customers will generate it whether you like it or not, right? They will go out and they will write their stuff. And whether you have it in-house, whether you control it and it's owned, is up to you. Content is a craft, which means you can't get a 1,000-word article about biochemistry for $2,000. Sorry, for $200. Yeah, that's it. $2,000 maybe. A 1,000-word article for $200. There we go. You can't even get someone who can spell for $200. The other problem with content is people do the dumbest stuff. They will get stock photos that are so ridiculous, and they will put them right into their stuff. There are stock photos that are great. I use them all the time. But come on. I mean, who's going to look at this and say, oh, yeah, that's legit. That really makes me feel connected with that brand because I, too, was grown in a vat. No, it's not going to happen. And, in fact, if you do a search on Google for this image, it shows up so many times. So quick wrap up, and then we can do questions and answers. You don't have to know all of this at a tactical level. The whole purpose here is to start building this T-shaped knowledge set where you know you have a solid knowledge of everything. You understand what search is for. You understand why earned media is important. You understand how it interacts with content and creative. You understand how creative supports everything else and how infrastructure supports that. I'm not looking for everyone to know how a server, the deeper parts of how a server works or have deep knowledge of Google's algorithm or anything like that. You understand the strengths and weaknesses of each channel. You understand that there's very little chance a client can succeed without at least paying attention to these three things, at least getting their brand covered in them. And just think of these basic rules. So earned earns you attention. Paid pays off fast. Owned means you're literally owning your audience, right? Once they reach that point, you control their experience. So you want to really work for significance. You want to target the weird, which I talked about last time, and it's that kind of very niche audience. And you have to be useful and consistent. Those are the 4 keys to all of this. If you remember nothing else, remember weird, useful, significant, consistent. Those are the 4 big drivers. And remember how they break out in the customer story. And then I've sort of structured them all, and again, you'll be able to see this in the slide deck later, but cost versus complexity. So you can see SEO is pretty high up there. Staying power versus sort of speed. And then the level of expertise required versus the potential to completely screw yourself. and you can take a look at those later. So that's what we talked about this time. Next time, I'm literally going to walk through planning a strategy at very high speed. So that's it. Questions? Any questions?
You talked about recovering from like penalties, the SEO penalties. Do you know much about recovering from if you're on that spam list?
Yes, so the question was, how do you recover from being blacklisted? Actually, it's pretty straightforward. You can actually contact a service like Spamhaus and say, hey, I know we're on the spam list. I think it was because of this, and we're not doing it anymore. And if you just kind of keep at it and you get them to believe you, they will take you off. But that's the only way to do it. There's no other. And then just keep in mind they will be watching you after that. Other questions? Wow. Okay, cool. Thanks, everybody.